Welcome to the overview of cast netting, a game designed by Kenji Sugawara and Masao Okano. You've spent the last 40 years as a journalist traveling the world, and it's finally time for a change. Time for the simple life. You decide to open up a bait shop in a quaint coastal New England town where no one knows your name. But fishermen will be fishermen, and you'll eventually find yourself at the piers, meeting other locals, and bragging all about your exploits. Cast netting is a 1 to 4 player polyomino shaping roll and write game where you will be rolling dice, creating polyominoes with the dice representing your cast nets, and drawing the shape into your ocean grid. Strategically place dice to catch fish, collect treasure, and avoid rocky waters to score the most points by the end of the game. To set up the game, you will need 5 six-sided dice. Each player gets their own player sheet and a writing utensil. Fold your player sheet along the dotted line so that the top part of the sheet can be used as a screen. To begin, each player must simultaneously mark off one of the 4 corner piers. This is your starting location, and it's from here where your adventure begins. Each round consists of 2 phases, with one player being the active player and all other players being the passive players. At the end of the round, the active player rotates to the next player in clockwise order. Rounds continue until a player or players has either visited all 4 piers or can no longer place a shape in their ocean grid. Randomly select an active player to begin the game. Rolling phase. In the rolling phase, the active player will gather all 5 dice and roll them up to 3 times as they attempt to roll specific die faces to help them in the next phase. The key at the bottom right corner of your player sheet will tell you what each die face represents. 1s and 2s represent X's, 3s, 4s, and 5s represent water, and 6s represent nets. First, roll all the dice. If you like what you rolled, proceed to the next step. You also have the option to re-roll any and all of the dice up to 2 more times to try to change your luck. To do this, set aside any dice you would like to keep and re-roll the rest. Once you're done rolling, set aside any X faces as they will not be used. If all dice show an X face after the final roll, the active player must pick one die face of their choice that everyone must use. They may choose an X face, which would result in no dice being placed. With the remaining dice, configure a shape where each die is orthogonally adjacent to at least one other die. You can make any shape you like. This will result in an arrangement consisting of between 1 and 5 dice. Here are some examples. Placement phase. Now, all players, active and passive, must then simultaneously draw this shape into their ocean grid following these placement rules. 1. Your entire dice configuration must be placed orthogonally adjacent to a previously filled square. 2. It must be placed entirely on the map and cannot overlap islands or previously filled squares. 3. The dice configuration may be rotated, but not mirrored. On your first turn, your placement will need to be adjacent to your starting pier, but as the game goes on, your options will grow as you traverse across the map. Players may also use one purchased ability during this phase. I'll get to those in a minute. As you fill the dice configuration into your ocean grid, you will be covering up various icons. Let's talk about the die faces and what they do. X faces, or 1s and 2s, are set aside at the end of the rolling phase and cannot be used during a turn. Net faces, or 6s, represent net fishing. Any space where a net is placed gets a circle put on it. If you circled a fish or treasure, congratulations! You've caught fish or found treasure. If you've placed a circle over rocks, your boat has taken damage and you will lose 1 point at the end of the game for each one. Mark off 1 space on your player sheet for each circled fish, treasure, or rock. Water faces, or 3s, 4s, and 5s, represent the traversing of your boat. Anywhere this die is placed within the configured shape must be filled in to indicate your boat has traversed over this area without casting a net. If you have filled a fish or treasure space, you can no longer net those areas for the remainder of the game. If you have filled in a rock space, your boat has taken damage and you must mark off a rock on your player sheet for each rock space that was filled. All players check to see if you've covered any fish, treasure, pier, or rock spaces and mark these off on your player sheet. If you have covered a pier, you can now visit the pier. Every player may visit each pier once. If you traverse to a pier, mark it off. If you were the first person or persons to get to this pier, including the middle pier, circle the ribbon on the pier. This is worth 3 reputation points at the end of the game. Starting piers don't count toward this. There are 2 things you may do at piers. 1. Each time you dock at a pier, you will score reputation points equal to 2 times the number of fish you have caught up until then. Mark this off on your player sheet. I have caught 3 fish up until now, so I will score 6 reputation points. If I have still only caught 3 fish by the time I get to my second pier, I will also score 6 reputation points. It's important to note that you must go to piers to score points for any fish caught. 2. You may then spend your treasures to purchase any number of useful abilities from the right side of your player sheet. Each treasure has a specific cost and a specific number of uses that it comes with. Each ability can only be purchased once. You will still score 1 point for every treasure at the end of the game, spent or unspent, so spend away. When an ability is purchased, fill the circle to the left of the ability indicating that you have purchased it. You may use it starting on your next turn. Let's talk about these abilities. Purchasing Reroll allows you an extra reroll when you are the active player. Cut Shape allows you to make a single cut in the shape that the active player has made. You then choose one of the 2 shapes you've made to place on your ocean grid. The active player may also use this ability to cut their own shape. This only applies to your player sheet. Unlocking the middle pier allows you to visit the pier in the middle of the map. There's no other way to access the middle pier. Purchasing Net allows you to treat one of the dice from the configuration in the placement phase as a net. This only applies to your player sheet. Bumper allows you to traverse or cast a net in one grid space that has a rock. If you place your shape over more than one rock space, Bumper only protects your boat from one of them. Private Island is a passive ability and is scored at the end of the game. It allows you to score 2 points for each island that you fully surround with filled spaces. An island is considered surrounded if all orthogonally adjacent spaces are filled. An island takes up a single space in your ocean grid. Some islands are placed together in clusters. Surround these clusters and you receive 2 points for each island space. When an ability is used in the placement phase, fill one of the empty circles under the ability, indicating that you have used it. Once all circles are filled, the ability is no longer accessible for the rest of the game. Once all players have added their shapes into their grid, which might have also triggered visiting piers, the round is over. First player will move to the next player in clockwise order, and you can begin the next round. If the game end was triggered during the round, move on to final scoring. The game end is triggered once a player has visited their 4th pier or once a player cannot place the shape created by the active player. Finish the round, which might include visiting piers, and then move to end of game scoring. Total your final score by adding the sum of the points from each pier visit, 1 point for each collected treasure, spent or unspent, 3 points for each pier that you docked at first, and -1 point per boat damage. The player with the most reputation points wins. In the event of a tie, the player with the most unspent treasure among the tied players is the winner. Cast netting allows for an engaging solo play variant called the oil spill. An oil spill is consuming fishing grounds and making it hard to navigate the local waters. Race against time to catch fish and find treasure, and if you're skillful enough, you might even contain the spill. A few rules are modified from the multiplayer game to provide a quick and challenging experience. Please see the rulebook for more details. Thanks for playing, and have fun!